He wasn't crying. He just wouldn't let me leave. My name is Nina. I'm 32, and that evening I was driving the outer road past a service strip on the edge of Raleigh, North Carolina, thinking about nothing important. Work had run late. The light was dropping fast. I remember the sky looking flat and pale, that in-between color before dark settles in for real. I almost missed him. He was sitting right near the shoulder, too close to the white line, a tiny white and ginger kitten pulled in so tight he looked smaller than he should have. His ears were pinned back. His front paws were set like he'd locked them in place. Cars kept passing, loud and fast, pushing air across the ditch grass, and every time one went by, he flinched. But he didn't run. That was the part that got me. A feral or even half-feral kitten usually bolts. This one just sat there, wide-eyed, like the world had already scared him past movement. I pulled over without really deciding to. I took off my hoodie as I walked toward him, talking the way people do when they know a cat can't understand the words but might understand the tone. "It's okay," I said. I know. He let me get closer than I expected, not because he trusted me, more like he had run out of places inside himself to go. When I wrapped him up, he was trembling so hard I could feel it through the fabric. I tucked him against my chest and carried him back to the car, already thinking about warmth, water, maybe calling a foster contact I knew through work. Then, right by the passenger door, he changed. He braced all four paws against my arm and twisted hard, not wild, not panicked, deliberate. He turned his head toward the tall grass by the ditch and stared. I tried again. Same thing. He dug in, looked back, and held himself there like he was refusing a deal. He didn't cry. He didn't try to scratch me. He just would not agree to leave. I had one hand on the car door when I realized it. He wasn't waiting on me. I stood there with the door half open and my hoodie bundled in my arms, and for a second, I honestly thought I was imagining it. The kitten had gone completely still. His whole little body was angled toward the ditch grass, like there was something there I was supposed to notice. So I shut the car door and went back. I used the flashlight on my phone and moved the beam slowly through the grass by the shoulder. At first I saw nothing but weeds, an old cup, bits of flattened brown stalks near the ditch. Then the light caught something dark and soft-looking that didn't quite belong there. It was a second kitten. Black smoke, or close to it, charcoal at first glance, but lighter underneath when he shifted just enough for me to see it. He was so still that if the light hadn't hit his face, I might have taken him for a shadow or a wad of trash caught in the grass. That scared me more than if he'd tried to run. The white and ginger kitten in my arms changed the second I turned toward that spot. He stopped fighting me. He stretched his neck out as far as he could and made this small, tight sound, barely a meow, more like something squeezed out of him. It was the first real sound he'd made. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I see him." The darker kitten didn't come to me. He didn't call back either. He just watched, low to the ground, like he had nothing left to spend on fear or trust. I crouched down and reached for him with the old towel from my back seat. He was lighter than he should have been. Quiet. Too quiet. But the second I lifted him, the kitten against my chest finally settled. He pressed himself in close to the other one so fast it almost hurt to watch, like something had clicked back into place. Like now the picture made sense again. But standing there with both kittens against me, I already knew later would be too late in the only way that mattered. When I started the engine, they calmed down for the first time, only because they were touching. I kept looking at them through the rearview mirror the whole drive, not for long stretches. Just those quick checks at red lights, at turns, in the glow from other cars. They didn't look like littermates. The white and ginger kitten was wiry and tense, the kind of kitten whose fear still had movement in it. The darker one was quieter in a way that felt harder to read. Black smoke, soft-looking from a distance, but shut down up close, like he still hadn't decided whether the world around him was real enough to answer. But every time one of them shifted, the other reacted. If the ginger one lifted his head, the darker one opened his eyes. If the dark one tucked himself deeper into the towel, the ginger kitten turned toward him almost right away, like he needed visual proof that he was still there. I had seen bonded animals before. This didn't feel polished or sweet. It felt improvised, Like two scared little creatures had met in the wrong place and made a rule without words. The intake room was still open when I got there, but barely. Bright lights, wiped down counters, that clean, tired end-of-day feeling. A staff woman came out with a clipboard and looked at the bundle in my arms, then at the carrier, then back at me with the kind of expression people get when they already know the answer won't be simple. She was honest, which I appreciated even while I hated hearing it. Kitten season was bad. Space was tight. 2 kittens with no background, no owner info, no paperwork, found roadside at dusk. That wasn't an easy placement. They could be checked over and set up in a quiet room for the night. But after that, unless someone took them as an emergency foster for 72 hours, there was a good chance they'd be sent wherever space opened up. Separately. I didn't say anything right away. A few years earlier, I had gotten too attached to an animal I was only supposed to help for now, and afterward my apartment had felt wrong for months. Too quiet, too empty in a way that got under my skin. Since then, I had gotten careful with myself. Useful, but careful. I liked limits, end dates, controlled distance. While she was talking, they set down 2 little dishes of food. The ginger kitten didn't touch his. He stood over it, sniffed once, then turned away and looked for the darker kitten instead. Only when the second bowl was placed close beside his did he lower his head. The pen was already in my hand when I understood what signing would mean. Not just 3 days. Something deeper than that. I signed. That was how they came home with me, tucked into one carrier with a folded towel between them that neither of them actually used. My laundry room was the only place that made sense. It had a door I could close, no big windows, no foot traffic, no television noise, none of the restless pacing I knew I'd do if I let them loose in the apartment too soon. It was the one room I could make quiet enough for them, and maybe for me too. What started there was not what people usually mean when they talk about 2 kittens being attached. They didn't curl up in one perfect little ball all night. They didn't mirror each other every second. It was stranger than that, and more convincing. One would lower his head to drink, and the other would lift his. One would take 2 cautious steps away from the blanket, and only then the other would shift position, like he needed that small update before deciding what the room was. They were measuring the world through each other. I gave them temporary names because calling them the ginger one and the dark one felt wrong by then. Tiller for the white and ginger kitten. Ashby for the black smoke. I told myself names didn't mean anything, just something practical to put in my phone when the rescue coordinator texted. But even as I said that out loud, Tiller was standing near my sneaker, looking up at me, and Ashby was watching from the back of the carrier like a quiet witness. The next morning, Tiller did something new. He came closer to me on purpose. Not all the way, not boldly, but enough to close half the distance. Then I noticed why. He could see Ashby from where he stood. The second Ashby shifted out of sight behind the carrier door, Tiller stopped moving, like his courage had an extension in his cord and someone had tugged it loose. Around mid-morning, the practical part of life caught up. My lease was strict. 1 pet was paperwork. 2 was the kind of situation that turned into emails, fees, questions I didn't want to answer yet. The coordinator was honest about that too. Bonded pairs were harder to place. People liked the idea of them more than the reality. And if a solid home opened up for 1 kitten first, there would be pressure. Not cruelty, just pressure dressed up as reason. At 12:17, my phone lit up with the first adoption inquiry. They were interested in the ginger one. Only the ginger one. I stared at that message longer than I should have. It wasn't hard to understand why people noticed Tiller first. He photographed better. He came forward sooner. Even in the laundry room, with the washer humming once in a while through the wall, he looked like the kind of kitten people imagine when they picture rescue. Small, bright-faced, a little shaky but reachable. Ashby was different. He was beautiful too, but in a quieter way. You had to wait for him. Most people don't know how to do that. The coordinator called me later and said what I already knew she was going to say. I should at least consider it. Not forever, she said. Not in any cruel way. Just if the right home opened for one of them first. Sometimes that was how both got saved in the end, separately but safely. It was a practical conversation, mature, sensible. The kind of conversation adults are supposed to be able to have without turning everything into a moral crisis. So I tried. I told myself they might not even be related. Maybe they had just ended up in the same bad patch of roadside and clung to each other because fear makes fast decisions. Maybe I was the one making too much out of it because I needed their bond to mean something. Then that afternoon, I tossed a little fabric mouse across the floor. Tiller went after it right away. Not fully, just halfway. He stretched one paw toward it, almost touched it, then stopped and looked over his shoulder. Not at me. At the shelving unit by the wall. Ashby was underneath it, hidden in shadow. Tiller waited. He just stood there, paw lifted, looking back until Ashby finally stepped out and sat where he could be seen. Only then did Tiller tap the toy and bat it once across the tile. I felt something in me go still when I saw that. It wasn't cute. Not really. It was how they functioned. Tiller tested the world first. Ashby made that world bearable enough for him to test at all. Take that apart, and each of them would lose half his nerve. That evening, my phone rang again. The family was ready to come the next day, but only for one kitten. The next morning, I brought both of them. Nobody had asked me to. The meeting had been for Tiller. That was the whole point. But I couldn't make myself leave Ashby behind in the laundry room like he was some detail to be explained later. So I loaded one carrier with both kittens and drove over with my stomach tight the whole way there. The space was small, set off to one side of the rescue shop. Bright overhead lights, shelves with supplies, people moving in and out. Nothing dramatic about it, which somehow made it harder. In an ordinary room like that, you could see exactly which animals were holding themselves together by almost nothing. The family came in with a child maybe 8 or 9 years old, soft voice, careful hands. They went straight to Tiller. Of course they did. When I opened the carrier, he stepped out first. He froze for a second, low to the ground, then stayed there and let them look at him. He didn't bolt. He didn't shut down. He looked small and brave and very easy to love. It was the kind of chance any reasonable person would have taken. Then he stopped. He had taken maybe 3 steps toward them when he turned sharply and looked back at the carrier. Not hiding, not panicking, just waiting, like he couldn't finish entering this new room without Ashby in it too. I felt it before anyone else seemed to. When the carrier door opened wider, Ashby didn't rush out. He just stepped forward once and pressed his shoulder lightly against Tiller's side. That was all. But after that, both of them moved differently. Not confident exactly, just steadier. Tiller walked a little farther. Ashby stayed close enough to see him. The whole room softened around them. The family smiled. The little girl smiled, and then one of the adults said it apologetically. They're wonderful. We're just only ready for one. Everything in me tightened again. Because on paper, that was reasonable. And standing there with both kittens in front of me, it felt completely wrong. I understood all at once that in the next minute, I was either going to let one of them go or become a difficult person for the rescue to deal with. I said no, not in some clean, brave way. My voice shook. I could hear myself sounding uncertain even while I was doing it. I said I was sorry. I said I didn't think they should be split. I said it in that awkward, half-apologizing tone people use when they know they're making life harder for everyone in the room. The coordinator was frustrated, and I understood why. Not because she was cold. She wasn't. But the system does not love complicated stories. It loves openings, timelines, workable outcomes. I was standing there with 2 kittens, a strict lease, a coming apartment inspection, extra costs I had not planned for, and a job that already took more out of me than I liked to admit. That night, I almost talked myself out of it. I lay in bed and thought maybe I was being emotional. Maybe in the morning I would call back and say, yes, go ahead. If the right single home comes up first, we'll do it. I turned that thought over so many times it started sounding responsible. Then morning came, and Ashby was gone. Not gone from the apartment, gone inside the laundry room. He had found a narrow gap behind the washing machine and worked himself so far back I could barely see the shape of him. I got down on the floor and called softly. Nothing. I set food nearby. Nothing. And Tiller, who finally had the room to himself, who could have explored, eaten, come to me, did none of it. He lay down beside that gap and stayed there. He didn't touch breakfast. He didn't paw at the toy mouse. He didn't come when I opened the door. He just waited, eyes on that dark space, like that was where the whole day was now. Almost an hour passed. Ashby didn't come out for food. He didn't come out for my voice either. He came out only when Tiller crawled a little closer and reached one paw toward the edge of the gap, barely touching the floor there, like he was knocking. That was it. That was the moment something in me stopped arguing. I called the coordinator and told her as plainly as I could, either they leave for one home together, or I take on the foster time, the cost, and the lease conversation until we find exactly that. After that, it wasn't really about whether I was right anymore. It was whether I could carry what that choice was going to cost. What came after that was not some perfect ending. It was a string of small, correct decisions that kept costing something. I worked out a temporary pet add-on with my apartment office and tried not to think too hard about the number. I picked up extra shifts where I could. The rescue updated their listing, so the boys were no longer just two kittens. They were marked as a bonded pair, with a plain explanation of why. Not dramatic, not sentimental, just honest. And that honesty cost them interest. A few applications faded, the second people heard they needed to stay together. Every time that happened, I felt my confidence dip. Not because I thought I was wrong anymore, but because being right does not magically make things easier. Still, by then the shape of the story had become clear even to me. What mattered most about them was not who was friendlier, or prettier, or easier on first meeting. It was that together, they were braver than either one knew how to be alone. Their home did come, just not fast. It was a father and his teenage daughter out in the Raleigh suburbs, in a house that had gone too quiet after a move neither of them had wanted very much. They didn't ask which kitten was the better one. They asked what happened between them when one got scared first. That was the moment I started to believe it might be real. At the meet and greet, Tiller stepped out first, like always. He checked the room in small, careful pieces. Ashby came half a step behind him, close enough to see him, far enough to choose it for himself. The father noticed. The daughter noticed. Nobody smiled like it was just cute. Nobody tried to separate the scene into two easier parts. A few days later, they sent me a video. The boys were asleep together in a hammock by the window. There was plenty of room around them, other soft places to go, sunlight everywhere. But they were pressed close anyway, not because they had to be, just because that was still how home worked for them. A week later, the rescue called me about another kitten, and this time, I already knew why I wasn't going to let the phone ring out.